The thing that really, I wasn't expecting is I got in touch with Pierre Gasly, who is now in Formula One. So I don't know if... It was actually over Christmas in December a few years ago. I set myself the goal of doing almost like an advent calendar of interviews. So 24 interviews over 24 days in December. And so I fired those off, not expecting many replies, but I got a lot of replies back. I got in touch with Pierre Gasly, who was like, yeah, okay, let's do an interview.
Was that his PR?
That was through him. Everybody up until that point, I had done, I'd sent them the questions through email and they had replied through email. And I was comfortable. That was in my comfort bubble. I didn't have to jump on any phones or speak to people. Then Pierre was like, no, let's have a phone call. Here's my number. Call me between these times and we'll have a chat. And so I was thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? For other drivers that I have interviewed this year, Max Verstappen, the current champion, Rez's teammate, Oscar Piastri, with Jenson Button, and Susie Wolff is another one. Sebastian Vettel was one of them, being Lewis Hamilton.
Hi, Katy. Welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Super excited to speak to you, Formula One fan here. And equally, your profile, given what you do, is absolutely amazing. And I'm selfishly very excited to speak to you today. So I know quite a bit about you, having come across your profile, and we've chatted a little bit. But for people who are coming across your profile for the first time, give us an introduction. Who's Katy?
Well, Katy is a motorsport writer, journalist, however you want to word it. I also have a podcast where I talk about F1 and my experiences working within the motorsport industry. But yeah, I'm just a passionate F1 fan who has managed to turn that passion into my full-time job. So I feel very lucky. I am living the dream.
You mentioned that you managed to turn your dream into a job. And I think not everyone is lucky to be able to have that.
Yes.
I think some of us obviously go to work, 9 to 5, need to pay the bills, but we may not be enjoying our work to the fullest. But you're one of the very few. Formula One is a sport that's watched by millions of people. And you managed to make that your job. So maybe take us back to the beginning. You say you just turned 28?
I did, yeah.
Okay, so take us to when the journey started, because I seem to have come across a journey that goes over quite a few years.
It has been a long time coming. It hasn't happened overnight, unfortunately. Would have saved me a lot of time and energy if it had. But yeah, I've always been a huge motorsport fan. I have my dad to thank for that. He introduced me and my brother to it at a very early age. And I would start by watching motorsport and F1 on a Sunday just to spend time with him, really. But then the more time went on, the more I fell in love with Formula One, and I'd find myself knowing about all of the drivers in the championship and, who they drove for that year, who they drove for the year prior, their nationalities, all of this weird, unusual stuff that you think, I wasn't intending to pick up on. Mm-hmm. And then it sort of snowballed from there. And Formula One is a sport that has such a rich history. I mean, Formula One itself has, I think, just finished its 73rd season. So you've got all of that history, and so much has changed in that amount of time. And so I found myself wanting to learn more about it. And so I would go through and I'd research it. And then that's kind of where the hobby started. I became obsessed. And so this was probably when I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
So quite a long time ago. My earliest memory is from a Grand Prix that happened in 2006, where there's a driver called Jenson Button, and he won his very first race. And it sticks in my mind because when he won, you could see his eyes almost popping out of his head behind his visor. It's a very iconic image. And so that's sort of where it started. And then to get into how I've made it my job, like I said, it's over a long period of time, but essentially in 2013, I started a blog over the summer holidays or vacation or whatever you call it, wherever you're from. And I started writing about Formula One there. And it was literally just something to help pass the time during the 6 weeks off that I had from school. And I really enjoyed it. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll give it a bit more of a try. And then I, a real summarized version of it, would then try and get myself to as many races as I can. And Formula One is a really difficult championship to they don't accredit just anyone. So I had to start small. And so I decided to go into Formula E, which is electric racing. And that was just starting out at the same time as I was starting out. And so they were kind of growing as well as I was growing in terms of my writing. And they sort of welcomed me in with open arms. And I learned a lot of things through that championship. And yeah, over the last 10 years, it's sort of snowballed and opportunities have come my way. And now this year, 10 years later, I'm able to write about Formula One and Formula E and other motorsport championships as my full-time job. But it has not been as smooth as I've maybe made it sound to be. But yeah, I'm very lucky to have that.
Really rate the honesty, as in being open about your journey that has taken many years, because success doesn't happen overnight, or at least not for everyone. You made it sound easy. Or at least I felt like you didn't give yourself enough grace. But that part of the job, for what we see on the TV, it's a niche sport. It's a very technical job requirement, I presume. As much as you were passionate about the job, I'm sure there was a lot of technical requirements when it comes to writing, knowing about the different moves, knowing about the different racing techniques. Tell us a bit more about the technical aspect of the job.
Yeah, well, there's definitely been a lot to learn. So when I said I was doing my A-levels back in 2013, which is the year I decided to start this blog, I had all the intentions of going to university and being a teacher. That's what I wanted to do since I literally started school at the age of 5. And then I had my first year of A-levels and I got my results through and they weren't as I wanted. Basically, I had failed my first year of A-levels. And so that was a huge setback. And when it came to the option of, do I redo my first year again, or do I carry on with my second year, carry on with all my friends and be in their classes, but have to work twice as hard to sort of bring the grades up to a good average? And I had already worked really hard in that first year. So it was quite a disappointing set of results. But I decided to redo that first year and go for subjects that were more based around a career in media. But when I got to the end of A-levels, the last thing I wanted to do was more education. I was so done with it. And although everyone was telling me I had to go to university, I actually just wanted to get straight into the real world, get some real world experience. And so I did my passion, my writing for Formula One on the side of that. But like you say, the technical elements that I've kind of had to learn over the time have all been self-taught. I never ended up going to university. I never got a journalism degree. I think that's something that a lot of people might think, oh, to be a journalist, I have to get, the qualifications and have that on my CV. I'm here to tell you that, yes, that could be a really sensible option, but that's not the only option, which I think when I was in education, my sixth form that I had were very unsupportive at the idea that I didn't want to go to university. They were telling me that I'd reach ceilings, that I, wouldn't be able to excel in my career, and I would basically get nowhere without university, which I'm not saying is, I'm sure university has worked out wonders for several people. I'm not saying don't go to uni. That's not my advice. Don't take that away from this podcast. But I'm just saying that there are other routes into it. But yeah, it has been a lot of things that I've taught myself. Obviously, my way of writing, there's always things that you can do to improve it. But a lot of it has just come from writing what I would like to read as someone who's in F1. I found that quite a lot of the content that I was consuming when I was a fan, and I still am a fan, but when I wasn't doing this as my job, a lot of it is maybe quite stale, quite dry, quite informative. Don't get me wrong, but there was nothing that I could find that really had that kind of personality to it. And so I use that as my niche, and that's something that I've still continued with until now. So yeah, there's lots of things to sort of teach yourself. Podcasting is another sort of string that you can add to that bow. But a lot of it is just stuff that I've seen on track, I've picked up, I've heard other people talk about, like you say, in terms of how I know how Formula One engine works or something like that. Reading books, listening to other podcasts, watching YouTube videos on it. It's all things. And the great thing is that you can always learn. There's always more stuff to learn. So yeah, it's been a lot of random stuff that's stored away in my brain, but lots of it does come in handy. So
right. So I obviously, I'm a big fan. I have my favorites in terms of the Formula One team, but I do want to hear from you. Well, you went through having a passion for Formula One, having an interest, and then eventually had more of a real work experience with them. What was the start of that? How did you get into it?
So I guess the first thing that I did, which kind of really opened doors for me, was it was actually over Christmas and December a few years ago. I set myself the goal of doing almost like an advent calendar of interviews. So 24 interviews over 24 days in December.
Interviewing who?
Well, just various people within the motorsport world. So some of them were maybe PRs that worked in the industry. Some of them were drivers, but not just across Formula One. I interviewed people. There's a championship called DTM, which is a German touring car championship. So I spoke to the champion of that year, and just trying to get in touch with as many people across different sectors as I could.
So wait, I'm really curious. So
yeah.
How did you reach out to them?
Just emailing a lot of them. So yeah, like customizing each email, because there's nothing worse than getting an email where you know it's been copied and pasted to every single person. Like, so customizing the emails, reaching out and just explaining who I am. Hi, I'm Katy. I don't know how to have been 20 years old. I'm an aspiring motorsport journalist, and I've got this idea for doing, 24 interviews over 24 days. Would you like to participate? And so I fired those off, not expecting many replies, but people, maybe it was because it was the end of the season and they had some time, some flexibility, but I got a lot of replies back. And the one that kind of sticks out for me from that was I got in touch with Pierre Gasly, who is now in Formula One as an Alpine F1 driver.
But he wasn't.
He wasn't. He had just won the GP2 championship. So that's like the formula underneath Formula One. And I was not expecting anything back from it. But sure enough, he was like, yeah, okay, let's do an interview.
Was that his PR? Was that?
That was through him. So I don't know, like he had a really... I don't know, like if he didn't have a PR team or anything, but yeah, he replied directly. And the thing that really like I wasn't expecting is everybody up until that point I had done, like I'd sent them the questions through email and they had replied through email. And I was comfortable. That was like in my comfort bubble. I didn't have to like jump on any phones or speak to people. Like I have that anxiety, the same kind of thing of like when you were calling the doctor's office and you didn't want to speak to them. I was like, yeah, I'm happy. Yeah. I was literally like, we'll do it through email. It'll be fine. But then Pierre was like, no, like let's have a phone call. Here's my number. Call me between these times and we'll have a chat. And so I was thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? But sure enough, like it ended up working out. We were on the phone for about an hour and he gave me so much information. He was really nice to speak to. Like I said,
sorry, I'm really...
No, of course, ask away.
Really intrigued. Was this a video call? Was this an audio call?
Just an audio call, yeah.
You were on the phone with him for an hour.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that was really, really cool. And he gave me so much information and things that I could sort of utilize. And then I'm pretty sure he was in F1 the next year. So yeah, it was like a big deal for me and actually, yeah, helped me sort of get out of my comfort zone a lot. And then from there, like phone interviews were fine, like it was okay, like everything went okay. But then the next step is like doing in-person interviews, and that was something that I really kind of was scared about. I was the person that had like all the notes written out, and I would just ask them exactly what I had written down in front of me. I wouldn't listen to what they said back, or like, sometimes you can speak some, just like you did there. Like I mentioned about Pierre Gasly, and you've like deviated the conversation because you want to hear more about it. When I first started, I was literally like, okay, like I don't care almost what they're saying back to me because I need to get to the next question. Yeah. And I spend my whole time like buried in a notebook. I wouldn't make eye contact with them. And it's taken a lot of time to sort of get over that fear and have that confidence. But it is a lot like exposure therapy. Like the more you do it, the better you'll get.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because similar to you, at the very start of the podcast, I had my list of questions. As you can tell, I had my question in the back of my head. I probably have them in my phone. But now I actually want to enjoy the conversation and to listen, because I feel sometimes you're rushing to get to the next question and it almost like, hang on, how old did you say you were? Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
Like,
that's true.
It's such an important reminder that I love hearing it from you because I rationalize it as well.
Yeah, no, it's been a skill that I'm still improving now. Mm-hmm. Like even last year or 2023, I keep calling it last year, it's this year still. I did a lot of stuff with Formula E and like one of the PRs came up to me after an interview session and she was like, I see a lot of myself in you when I was younger. She's like, have more confidence in your questions. You ask really good questions. Keep the eye contact with drivers. And I forget the last piece of advice. So clearly it stuck with me really well. But, she was like, keep that eye contact because the drivers will, like deal with you better if they can tell that you're genuine and you want to be there almost. Right. And so that's something that I've had to build on a lot, and I still do struggle with it a little bit, but I'm trying to get better, and it's something that's always in the back of my mind now of being like, okay, I can speak to drivers with confidence. I can go into a media pen, which is like where all the drivers go to, and that's where you ask your questions after sessions and stuff. Like I can go into a media pen with no questions prepped, like I've done that, I can do this. But yeah, the next thing is just that kind of body language. Because yeah, sometimes I will there's a photographer that took a picture of me and he's like, sometimes you interview people and you've got your arms crossed. And I'm like, that's true. Like that's not great body language. Like I am happy to be there, but it's just a little bit of a confidence thing. So I've got to remember to sort of like stand proud, keep the eye contact and like all that kind of stuff. But it takes time, time.
I used to always slouch.
Yes.
On this. And I had one or two friends be like, Jenna, why do you slouch? I'm like, my sister keeps telling me I'm always, is this great? Improve your body. But deep down, like listening, I'm engaged. It's camera.
You're comfortable.
And sometimes it does feel a bit more protective to kind of sit that way.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're giving yourself the comfort and equally like the confidence.
Yeah.
Talking to that person. But no, it doesn't really make sense, apparently, to experts who analyze.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting there, Katy.
We are.
So you had this phase of wanting to do the admin part. You were 20 years old, went out interviewing these amazing people. Then you went on to work for WTF1.
I did, yeah. That opportunity came along much later. So in between that time, I had normal jobs, as I refer to them, like everyday jobs. And I loved all of them. Like I worked in a fabric shop as a sales assistant. I then went and worked at hairdressers as front of house and reception, and then went on to do marketing for a kitchen and garden company, all of which have no correlation to motorsport, whatever. But I would do my blogging, my writing at the weekends, or I'd take all of my holiday. Like I think I went for about 4 or 5 years and I didn't have a single normal holiday because I just used all of my holiday time to go to races to write about motorsport. And people that I worked with just couldn't understand it. They were like, do you not just want to go to a beach and just chill out on a beach for a week? And I'm like, well, no, because I could use those 4 days to go to Berlin to the Formula E race or do this or do that. So I think a lot of people were quite confused by it. There was one instance which there's a motor show called, or the Geneva International Motor Show, which is in Geneva in Switzerland, funnily enough. And one day I took off work to go there and I literally was at the airport on a flight at 6 a.m, flew to Geneva, did the show, interviewed some people while I was there, came back in the evening, got home at 11 in the evening or whatever, went to bed, woke up, went to work the next day. So I only missed 1 day of work, but within that time I had flown to another country, done 2 or 3 interviews, come back again. And the people at work were like, that is not normal. You're so weird.
Did that ever get you to question your why when everyone else was questioning?
Yeah, for sure. And I had people close to me as well. All of my friends and family have been very supportive, and I feel bad because I feel like I throw him under the bus in every podcast I do. But my dad was definitely somebody who was very much a realist. And he said to me on several occasions, he's the reason I got into motorsport, don't forget. But I think it did come from a place of worry. He was like, how long are you going to do this before you start to realize maybe it's not going to happen? And I see where he's coming from, although when you're kind of young and wanting to chase his passion, it can be a bit of a oh, okay, right, well, you don't trust me, you don't believe I can do it. But actually he was just being the one voice that was okay, well, what if, I'm spending so much money to go to these races that I'm earning. And yes, people have hobbies, I would rather spend my money going to a race than going on holiday or whatever. So, it's how I spend my money. But yeah, fortunately it has worked out. And like you say, so I got my full-time opportunity with WTF1 in the sort of autumn of 2020. And yeah, that was a huge kind of moment because it was the first time that I could do this full-time. I could leave my job in marketing, which, like I say, I love those. If F1 and these opportunities never came, I think I could probably still be there now. I enjoyed it so much. It's not as if I was kind of having to do a 9 to 5 to make, live my dream life at the weekends. I was quite fortunate in that I just really enjoyed what I did.
You were still doing it for free.
Yeah, when I had to leave that job in marketing, I was so upset because it wasn't I had to leave it because I hated it and I hated the people I worked with or whatever. Some people might be in that position now where they think oh my gosh, I wish I could quit my job tomorrow. I loved it. So I was really upset when I had to go, even though I was going to my dream job. I wish I could like in another life just be like able to do all of these other cool jobs, but no, motorsport and writing about it is definitely my passion. But
I don't know if you've heard of Ali Darba. He's like a famous YouTuber and used to be an NHS doctor in the UK. Is now a #1 productivity expert. I think he's got close to 4 million subscribers on YouTube.
Wow, yeah.
And he has a podcast as well, but he does everything else. He's on YouTube, he's done books, and he's done amazing things on the podcast. And I actually got to meet him in person at the recent event because I've done the PTY, the YouTube Academy course.
Yeah.
And then he was saying the podcast doesn't bring him that much money, by the way, of all his revenue streams, and he makes millions every year.
Yeah.
And he said he will actually do it for free because learning that you get from people is just so amazing, and it just feels so nourished and confident from it. And I think going back to your point, like the fact that you would do it for free is almost a testament to your passion.
Yeah, that's very true, actually. That's a good way of thinking about it. I would still be doing it now and spending all my money, but it's fine.
So WTF1, which by the way, I think it was recently founded from what I came across. It was like in 2010 and it's got millions of views now. So that's part of the team that you were.
Yeah. So it was founded, I think, like you say, maybe in 2010 by a guy called Tom Bellingham, who, similar to like how my story started, is he started that in his university dorm room, I think that's right in saying. And it started out as a fan site for one of the teams, and it kind of just snowballed and grew. And then they realized the potential of it, and like their social media went crazy. They started a YouTube channel where they brought on a guy called Matt Gallagher, and then they were kind of doing amazing things there. And I know a lot of people have got into F1 through Drive to Survive, but they were kind of there before that, although Drive to Survive has no doubt helped everyone in the F1 space with their audience size. But yeah, in 2020, they had their guy who wrote for the website sort of decide to leave, to bow out. And so Tommy decided to get in touch and was like, we were friends anyway, but there's going to be this opportunity to come write for the website. I'd love to be able to put you forward for it. Like, would you be interested? And that's kind of how it started. So yeah, I worked there for about 1.5 years and like massively transformed how their website was and the kind of content to read on there. Like, I loved it because it allowed me to bring my personality out. We were talking earlier about how some of the things that you read on F1 can be quite dry and lack kind of any personality, which is absolutely fine because that's the audience that it's reaching and like what its purpose is. But I was able to add in jokes to what I was writing and emojis and puns and all the kind of stuff that you would like literally be the polar opposite to something you'd read on the BBC or the Guardian or something like that. But actually that allowed me to be creative, and fans like received it really well. And so I helped grow that like by quite a lot. I can't remember numbers off the top of my head, and I also am really bad at sort of like promoting and shouting about the things that I do well. But
as a podcast, how many viewers or listeners do you have now?
I mean, I'm nearly at 200,000 with the ones that I've done. So that's
that is also a shout out.
Thank you. But yeah, so I was there with the guys, and we had the most amazing time, the three of us. Obviously we were a trio that really clicked well, and I think part of that is we weren't afraid to take each other too seriously, and we could have a laugh with it, and we all kind of had our things that we were passionate about. Like, I was a real stickler for the rules and the regulations, and the others were really into the kind of drivers that they supported and stuff. So it was a great fun time, and I look back with very happy, fond memories. But yeah, we decided, the three of us, to kind of do our own thing at the start of the year. But there's no bad blood, which everybody says they must have had a big falling out. It's not true. We just grew up.
The question is why did Katy Fairman leave WTF1?
Oh, God. Well, yeah, I knew the boys were leaving anyway, and they've started their own project, something called P1 with Matt and Tommy. Give them a little shout out on here. And they've been doing so well. And then I kind of had the decision, do I want to stay within WTF1 and sort of look after it in this next chapter? Because when Matt and Tommy said they were leaving, and I knew this, there was a huge shift in the way WTF1 would be perceived, because it was very personality based. And so
it's a very millennially community, from what I can read.
For sure. So when they said they were leaving, I kind of had the decision, do I stay, do I go? And yeah, I decided to take the leap of faith and go freelance. But it is quite funny, we'd all handed in our notice within like a month notice period of whatever. But their announcement was done separately to mine, which is, you know, what it is. But yeah, loads of people were like, I bet Katy pushed them out or I bet they had this big falling out. No, it's just like the way that the announcement was done. Like when they said they were leaving, I had already handed my notice in for 2 months. So it's all a bit like intertwined and complicated. But yeah, it is a big question.
Right? When you look at where got you to.
No, exactly. Like I love my time there, as I said earlier. But I just thought, you know what? I am in a very lucky position where I can go freelance, and sometimes with the things at WTF1, like it was great, but I felt like I was chained to my laptop all the time. I never got the chance to go on like the crazy trips that Matt and Tommy did. I was the one that had to like stay at home and look after everything and take care of the social media or whatever it was, the website, while they were sometimes out having fun, which is fine because that's kind of like those two were, I don't know, like Matt was the presenter of the YouTube, and so I understand why he went, and Tommy obviously like helped found it, and the two of them have a great chemistry, which is why they've been able to start their own project. But yeah, sometimes it felt like a case of, oh, we'll just leave Katy to look after everything and we'll go and have fun. And so I was like, no, I want to go and have my own fun. So going freelance has allowed me to do that, and it's been an amazing first year with so many cool opportunities that I never even anticipated would happen when I sort of handed my notice in. So it's been good fun.
Which gets me to the part that I really want to hear about.
Okay.
So Formula One.
Yeah.
What led you to that? So the freelancing part.
Mm-hmm.
Did you suddenly get a call from somewhere, from someone? Like, tell me about the exact moment if you do remember it. And I'm sure you would, because that would have been a life-defining moment.
Yeah.
I'm really keen to hear about that particular moment where you actually got into Formula One.
Yeah. So I think it must have been a month or two after I had gone freelance, and I got an email from somebody claiming to be from Sports Illustrated. Mm-hmm. And my first thought was, this has to be junk. This has to be spam. This is really like, why do they want to speak to me? And so I replied back, and we set up a Zoom call. And still up until the lead up of the Zoom call, I was thinking, this feels, there's something about this. Just, I don't know, it just doesn't sit quite right. But sure enough, had the Zoom call, they were genuine. And yeah, Sports Illustrated wanted to use me as a freelance writer for the 2023 F1 season. Mm-hmm. And my role there was just to get interviews. So at the start of every race week, which there were 23 over the course of the season, they wanted me to have had an interview with somebody within the world of F1. And then that goes out ahead of, say, like the Dutch Grand Prix or the Mexican Grand Prix or whatever it may be. And it was like an absolute dream. And there were definitely some hurdles along the way. The first race that I was ever going to be accredited as F1 media, which like you kind of alluded to, like that life-defining moment, like this for me was going to be that big moment of like finally getting that pass in my hand, being able to go into the F1 paddock and be there as media. The race ended up getting cancelled because of it. Like, I completely understand why, but it was there was like torrential rain in that part of Italy in the Emilia-Romagna region, and it just simply wasn't safe to host the race. So I got all the way to Milan, landed in Milan, and then get the email to say, we're going to announce it's cancelled in a couple of hours. Like, go home. Just turn around if you're about to get on the plane, get off the plane. But by this time, I'd already touched down in Italy, and so a little bit felt like, oh, the universe is clearly not wanting this to happen. But actually, like, that was a small bump. Like, it did mean I had about 6 interviews planned that weekend. And so all of them got cancelled. And like, everybody was like, we can't do them on Zoom. You have to be in person to do these interviews. And I was like, well, the next race I'm coming to is not until 2 months away. So then I had to like scramble around and find people within the motorsport space that I could speak to on Zoom with short notice. And like, that was a really tricky moment and really bumpy. But fortunately, I think everyone that I was meant to interview at that time, I've been able to make up over the rest of the season, which has been really nice. But yeah, that's been like an absolute dream to land, and yeah, has allowed me to be in the F1 paddock. And still now, I'm like, this just feels so bizarre that that's happened this year. But
do you feel nervous going into the media pen?
Yes, like,
Still?
yeah. I think I've got over like the Formula E thing. My first experience of a media pen, I didn't actually even experience because I literally had a panic attack. Like at the idea of going into this media pen, speaking to these drivers, I found it so nerve wracking. I don't know, like I think I maybe just imagine them to be really rude, which they're not rude, they're lovely. And it was the time where I hadn't really done many face-to-face interviews, and I think I just got in my own head about it and just massively overwhelmed myself. But yeah, like speaking to some of the F1 drivers, I think the idea...
Who have you... Okay, give us names. Who have you not spoken to so far?
Who have I not spoken to? So the drivers that I'm really trying to like tie down for a one-to-one would be somebody like Lewis Hamilton, but he is very selective with his time, which is understandable, but also infuriating because I'm like, I want to interview him. I think that'd be so cool. There have been opportunities where I've had a chance to speak to him. So the drivers at the start of every weekend have like mandatory media commitments. So whether they're in the press conference, or they have their own sections in the team hospitality sometimes. So I have had a chance to ask Lewis a question this year where I decided to go and sit in the front row of like all these chairs that they lay out for journalists, and there was a space right in front of Lewis in the front row, and I was like, I'm gonna sit there. So I like found my way, sat down, was like looking at him the whole time.
Love the confidence.
I was like, just go for it. And then loads of people asking him questions around me, some of which I'm like, these questions are so boring now. Like, I know that people have to ask them, but, you know, sometimes it does feel quite samey, the questions they get asked of like, how are the new upgrades going to be on the car? And it's like, oh, yeah, I'm sure he doesn't want to really answer that. So I had the idea to ask him a question about a driver that was previously on the grid. He retired at the end of last year, a guy called Sebastian Vettel. Mm-hmm. And those two were close friends. They were like, you know, good mates. We all love Seb. And so I decided to put my hand up and ask a question. And there's a guy from Mercedes, a guy called Bradley, who's like head of communications, who stands at the sides and he points at you if you can answer your question. So he pointed at me, and so I got the microphone and I was like, gosh, I'm about to ask Lewis a question. He's like 2 foot away from me. This is so bloody weird. And so I started and was like, hi, Lewis, I hope you're well. Because sometimes people just like grab the mic and they're like, what do you think of like, whereas I was like, no, I'm going to just be like, hello, how are you? Probably didn't even mean anything. But to me, I was like, I want to start off on like a nice note. Nice. And then I said to him, you know, you're still friends with Sebastian Vettel. Like obviously he's not on the grid this year. Have you guys kept in touch at all? And then he like really kind of opened up the conversation. He was like, yeah, we text every now and then. In fact, he texts me over the summer break and I haven't responded to him yet. And I still had the microphone. From you. Yeah, well, I still had the microphone. And so I just like impulsively went, you left Sebastian Vettel on red. And like he laughed at it. And I was like, oh my God, I'm really having to laugh. So that was like a real amazing moment. And then he kind of went off on like another tangent. But yeah, I was like, dark Katy, you know, get that confidence. And I'm hoping for more kind of moments like that. But yeah, like a one-to-one with Lewis would be incredible. But like I say, I know that that's almost like an impossible dream, but I'm going to keep going for it.
Manifesting it.
Yeah, exactly. Manifestation is something that I've like massively brought on more this year. I like do think that like if you manifest things, they can happen. So but yeah, for other drivers that I have interviewed this year, like Sebastian Vettel was one of them, which I didn't even expect when I asked Lewis that question back in August. But that happened and that was amazing. And he was so down to earth. And like you say, everybody loves Sebastian Vettel. And so that was an incredible opportunity. Max Verstappen, the current champion, had a chance to interview him, as well as Sergio Perez, his teammate. Oscar Piastri, who's a rookie this year at McLaren. I interviewed Logan Sargent as well, another rookie this year, who just has announced that he's coming back for next year. I'm trying to think of people. Susie Wolff is another one. James Vowles, a team principal at Williams. Gunther Steiner. There's like a lot of
so many people.
Yeah, and it's just insane to think that like that's a list of people I've interviewed. It's so weird, but it's amazing.
Exciting. I can sense excitement, and I'm kind of jealous.
Sorry.
Do you find anyone who was particularly personable, approachable?
Who was really approachable? I don't know. I feel like a lot of drivers have been really good with the kind of questions that I've asked, because I really want to make an effort to not ask them the same kind of things that they'd get. And one thing Sports Illustrated said was that they want to get the personalities out of the drivers. Yes, talk to them about their racing and stuff like that, but we also want to know what they're like away from the racetrack. So that's allowed me to ask some really fun questions of like, do you like, what's your favorite movies? Like, give me your top 3 movies, or what does like a dream day look for you? Like, what kind of things do you watch? Like, if you've got a long haul flight, what are you watching on the plane? Like things like that, where it does allow people to let their personalities come out more, rather than asking them like, what are your expectations of the tyres this weekend or something, which can be very dry. So I have been lucky that people have been receptive of those. I think there was an interview with this James Vowles, who is the team principal at Williams, a role that he got this year. And he was really fun. He's got such an incredible way of talking and speaking with people, which is something that I don't think a lot of us really took for granted. He was previously at Mercedes, and so he's sort of gone into his own role at Williams now. But yeah, he's so articulate with the way he speaks. He's so engaging. Like, even if you're not into F1, I advise people listening or watching this to like go and find something that he's talked about, because he's just got so much passion and intelligence. And my interview with him was so interesting. He does racing in his own time as well. And so he was talking about like the mindset of a racer. And he said that, you know, although all the drivers on the grid might say to you that they don't get nervous, because they've got to kind of keep their walls up and make themselves like, you can't be vulnerable in a situation like that. He's like, they're all lying. All of them, I can guarantee you, get nervous when they're sat on that grid getting ready for the lights to go out. And so he was able to talk about that. And he's also part of this new Brawn GP documentary, which has gone on Disney Plus over the last few weeks, because he was part of this incredible sort of success story. That's another thing. If people want something inspiring or motivating to watch, like, check out the Brawn GP documentary. It's with Keanu Reeves, which is quite a curveball thing to include in it. But that's a real story of successes and sort of winning against the odds. But he was part of that team, so he spoke about that. So yeah, there's like lots of people that I've spoken to this year that I've really enjoyed. I feel like every interview I do, I'm like, that's now my favorite ever. But yeah, there were so many good ones. So
if you look back at the people you've interviewed this year and this journey, which seems so amazing, and I'm sure like you will only grow from here, can you pin down a ground-defining moment for you? Like, this was the groundbreaking moment.
That is a good question. I don't know if there's like one specific one. Maybe when I got the message from Tommy to say about WTF1, because that was the chance where I kind of had the idea that this could go into full time. And like I said, I've been doing it if I started in 2013 and I got the call up in 2027 years of like working towards that end goal to work in motorsport writing. So I think maybe that was probably the groundbreaking or like defining moment. But same kind of thing of like getting that email from Sports Illustrated is definitely up there. That interview with Pierre Gasly that I mentioned, that was kind of a big moment for me. So there have been lots of them throughout these last 10 years. But yeah, I think maybe the one from WTF1 sort of offering me this lifeline, I guess. Because like, although I said I could do it for free, like reality has to set in at some point, and there's only so long that you can maybe do something as a passion project before you have to kind of be like, okay, I'm a grown up now. I have like bills to pay and other commitments. So yeah, I think maybe that's the thing for me.
And cheaply, any inside stories from Formula One, from meeting the drivers, from meeting PR people, anything that we can find out from you?
I don't know about any like insight stories. I mean, there are things that you hear happening all the time. Like there's going to be quite a significant shift for one of the teams, AlphaTauri, next year. So they're going to lose their name, AlphaTauri. There's a name that's been rumoured around at the moment called Racing Bulls, which is what they might want to call the sister team. And like that's a name that people have discovered recently because I think they, I don't know what the official term is, but like put this logo into a database. And so it seems likely that that's going to be what they're rebranded to next year. But like that is a name that I had circulating in Austin. And so things like that, they do have a way of finding themselves like to come out of the woodwork. But yeah, in terms of sort of secret stories, most of the things have either come to light, like I mentioned, this Logan Sargent has re-signed for 2024. But yeah, now it's the end of the season. I feel like most things have kind of found their way into the public. So I don't know if I have any juicy goss, unfortunately, but if I think of any, I'll let you know. Yeah.
So I should have mentioned maybe I've worked in a corporate research capacity. I basically cover the automotive sector. So
yeah,
I think the only person I got to meet was Bruno Senna.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
And I got to see, I didn't speak to him, I was very nervous, but I got to see Owen Stroll.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
When he was at Aston Martin. So
yeah.
Obviously very charismatic. And I was way too nervous to even go and say hello, but it was kind of nice to kind of see him in person.
Yeah. It is like weird, that first few moments where you see people and you're like, oh, they actually exist.
Yeah.
I only see them in TV or magazines or whatever. Like, they're real. Yeah, there's a few times where like I've seen drivers and I've kind of had to just do like a factory reset and be like, okay, they're real, back into professional mode. So it's been quite fun.
Like a sort of pinching moment.
Yeah. And like, you know, sometimes there are moments where you want to have a little fangirl. Like, I have no shame in admitting that, because, you know, this is something that I have loved since I was 6 years old. And so getting the chance to see people in the paddock who maybe I've watched growing up, and, you know, I had the chance, I guess, like almost the biggest full circle moment I've had was only a couple of weeks ago, where I got to interview Nico Rosberg, who's 2016 Formula One world champion. And before I even got into the world of motorsport journalism or writing about it or whatever, he was the driver that I supported. Like, he was my favorite driver. And so I was able to sort of like watch his successes up until he won the championship in 2016. And then he retired shortly after. Like literally days after he won the championship. And so it was weird. Like, I was getting Facebook memories come up being like, 8 years ago today, you did this post. And it was like, Katy Fairman is feeling emotional because like Nico had just won in Brazil or something like that. And I'd shared this picture and be like, so proud of Nico. Like, this championship is going to be his or whatever. And then the chance to like on the same day, like see that from 8 years ago. And then now I'm interviewing him. And I had the chance afterwards. I was like, Nico, I hope this isn't embarrassing for you, but I have a confession. He was like, oh my God, what? And I was like, you know, before like just as I said to you, like, I was a big fan of yours and stuff. And he was really sweet about it. He was like, oh, that means a lot. Thank you for your support. And then he kind of made a joke and was like, sorry, it was a bit short-lived with my retirement. And I was like, it's fine. I forgive you.
I mean, when you say that to him, that it's just so weird the way the universe works, that this was 8 years ago. And on that same day, hearing this and this came out.
I literally could never have imagined.
Like spiritual, like, some sort of manifestation going on. But it's kind of a bit surreal, right?
Oh, it was so weird. I like got a little bit choked up talking about it when I was talking to him. I was like, remain calm, Katy, you're a professional. But it was just so weird to know like how many happy, sad tears had come from his results in the past. And to think that I'm now sat on a call with him, you know, asking him questions. And it was, it's very, very full circle. And there have been several moments like that, but I think that's definitely the biggest one. Like, that was something that I really wanted to have happen at some point in my career, whether it was this year, whether it was 10 years down the line, a chance to sit down with him and ask him some questions. Because, like I said, he was that kind of driver for me that was one of the reasons that I fell even harder in love with the sport. So, that was a really cool moment.
At any point when you go for the interviews, you put out your work on the public platforms, your podcast, Instagram, you're in the public domain. There's no way of hiding from criticism.
Yeah.
And I feel like Formula One is such a watch sport. And I think things that you put out there means that you're also open to criticism from very passionate viewers generally. Has there been any particular time throughout this whole journey where you were personally subject to criticism or negativity? And did it ever get to you?
There's definitely been times where I've had nasty comments and things like that, especially when you're voicing an opinion. I'm more than happy to, and I've always said this, like before we had like a huge influx of these fans that have come into F1 who are also equally as passionate, but like everything you say now I feel like is really out there and open to so many more people than it was, say, like 5 years ago or however long. But I've always said, like, I do not mind if you disagree with my opinion. And you have sometimes people say, well, actually, I don't think that's true because of X, Y, and Z. And you're like, do you know what? I hadn't even considered that in my initial argument. Like, I agree with you, or I changed my opinion. Like, shock people are allowed to do that. And so I, was always happy to sort of give my opinion out there and hear back from people. But like you say, quite a lot of people can become quite spiteful in it. And I got to the point where when I started at WTF1, because that was such a big platform, like the YouTube had 1 million subscribers and we were uploading our podcasts onto that every week. And same kind of thing, like the social following we had 1 million followers on Instagram, 1 million followers on Twitter or X or whatever it's called now. And so that was a lot of people that would consume your content. And at the start, I was looking through comments on the videos just to like that bit of acceptance. Like, it's not an ego thing at all. It was more just to know that, like, okay, 90% of the people on there are happy with my edition. That's fine. That's all I need to know. But sometimes you can sort of get a bit sucked in and want to look at the comments. And there are people that were like, Katy's been a terrible addition to the team. And I'm like, okay, but like 99% of the comments are lovely and really nice. But of course, you see the ones that are maybe not too kind about you or whatever. And that kind of sticks a little bit. But and it's always that like 1%. But sometimes, comments can stick with you. But generally, I'm just like, okay, well, you don't like me. That's a shame. I'm not going anywhere. But find another podcast if you're that upset about it. I'm not too bothered about it. But when I do share things on social media now, I do tend to mute the conversations almost as soon as I hit send on a tweet, which kind of goes against the idea of it being a social media community and a network and stuff. But there have been too many examples where I've gone and looked at my replies and people are just being like...
Twitter is a brutal place.
Twitter is brutal. So...
I'm not on there, but I've definitely heard too much not to want to be on it.
Yeah, like I said, it's 99% of people are really nice and great fun and lovely and complimentary or whatever and getting involved in discussion. But there's always that small 1% that I'm like, I'd rather just mute it and pretend that everyone in my replies is having a great time. It's like heaven on earth in my replies. There's no negativity. Rather than risk getting like 10 nice replies and 1 bad reply and then being like, well, this 1 reply has ruined my day. So
your 99.1% rule actually reminds me of something I've more recently read. And funnily, I had come across this post like months ago, and on it recently I've seen a few people like reposting it. And it goes, imagine you have $86,400 in bank account and someone takes away $10 from that. Would you throw away the remaining, if my max that would be $86,390? Would you throw away the rest of your money? No, you wouldn't. Then why is it that if someone says something negative to you for 10 seconds of your day, which is basically your 86,400 seconds of the day, why is it that we're so institutionalized, we're so conditioned that ruined the rest of our day?
That's such a good analogy.
It just makes so much sense to me because so many times someone says negative to us could be about our work, the way we dress, that you put on weight, you look a bit gloomy, and we allow it to just ruin the rest of our day. And I'm one of those, criticism gets to me. And I think your 99.1% rule of people liking to not liking you and not allowing it to get to you.
Yeah, it's
I wish I could get over that very quickly. I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
But that was such an important reminder, and it was like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Why do I have to care so much about someone, and let alone someone if I don't know really well?
Yeah, don't know them. Yeah. It's like a faceless Twitter account with like a username that's just made up of letters and numbers, and like it's clearly, not like a John Smith who's a real person or whatever. Like it is a funny one. That's a very good analogy. I will have to try and channel that into the next year maybe. But yeah.
I'm still working on it. I'm still trying to not let it get to me. And honestly, so far, the comments have been really supportive.
Yeah, that's great.
But so I had this imposter syndrome. Like literally this morning, I had someone who's a friend / a client. And I was like, oh, YouTube? Like passive income. Like, oh, you've seen my video. And I was like on my bed reading the comments. I was cringing at the very idea that he's come across on the video. I'm like, no. And obviously that's a Google search. I can't control Google.
Yeah.
Because I work in a corporate environment and I'm not putting news out there. Okay, fine. But the idea that people can see what I do.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm still trying to do work on that. My friends might be like, let it go. Like, it's all professional. Like, there's nothing you should end up all just closet to work, like, with the compliance team. But I still cringe at the idea that someone can get in my outside of work hours, that I'm meeting amazing people like yourself, and I'm like, this is what I do. So
They should be proud, not cringe. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean. It's finding that balance is always a tricky thing. And I'm also a massive overthinker.
Oh,
so that's fun. I just love nothing more than an overthinking spiral.
We're getting to the end of the podcast, but something that's quite important and I did want to bring up early on throughout our conversation. So the industry that you work in is quite a male dominated, from the races to maybe less so maybe the PR team, but the drivers to the sponsors, to everyone else involved. You made it to this industry. What does it feel like to be part of such an industry?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've never really considered, like, I am one of few women in this male-dominated industry. Like, I'm just there, you know, when I'm doing my job, I don't think about my gender when I'm there. Like, I'm just there to do the job. I'm there because I love it. I'm passionate about it. Just the same as the line of 5 guys sitting next to me. But one thing that has opened my eyes a lot being in the F1 paddock this year is, yes, things are improving massively in terms of television coverage. We've got incredible women being fantastic ambassadors for Formula One, people like Naomi Schiff, who does a lot of presenting on Sky, or Natalie Pinkham, or Rachel Brooks. You know, like I can list.
Paris, new female racer, Bianca.
Yeah. Like, there are so many amazing women that are making their way through to these sort of public-facing roles, which is excellent. But within the written journalism side, it's still so male-dominated. Like, one of my friends, another journalist called Claire Cottingham, she goes to quite a lot of the races and she has got her pass. And so she goes to a lot of these roundtables or sessions like the Lewis Hamilton one I was mentioning before. And it's so male dominated, which is not to say that the people that are there shouldn't be there, because they obviously bring things to the table. A lot of them have been doing this for decades. Or, you know, just like me, they're just passionate F1 fans. Like, you know, I can't sit here and say, because of my, like, I don't think about my gender when I'm doing my job and then be like, oh, there's so many men here, because that's not fair. Like, we're all there because we enjoy being, like, we just enjoy F1. But there's definitely still a lot that needs to be done in order to bring more women through into that, because that's not really, a light isn't really shone on that side of it, because it is just written. So you haven't got camera crews recording you as you do your press bits. But yeah, there's definitely a long way to go in that side of things. But I don't really know what the answers are. Like, we seem to have a huge influx in the last few years of female fans coming into the sport, which is incredible. And a lot of that is down to things like Drive to Survive, but also on track, we've had some amazing years, like, of great action. 2021, that season was just phenomenal. Like, I'm sure there will be a documentary about that one day, about how incredible the battle was between Verstappen and Hamilton, and went back and forth. And even away from that battle, there were so many amazing stories. So I don't think you can just say,
one of my favorite seasons as well.
It was so good.
Very controversial.
Yes, it was ended in a very controversial manner, which is unfortunate because it kind of soured the whole year. But, you know, there are so many more women that have now come in and discovered this sport. So I really hope, and I see it so much, like when I'm on TikTok or when I'm going through Twitter, of young women who are creating content for not only F1 fans in general, but maybe more specialized to the female audience. So there's like a real, like, promising group of women that are coming through. And hopefully it won't take as long as it has done for me for them to reach that top level and to help with that diversification. I don't know if that's a word, but we're going to make it. Yeah, we'll make it one. Because, yeah, there is still quite a lot that needs to be improved in terms of that diversity within the F1 sort of bubble. But it's definitely, well, I'd like to think it's improving. If people like myself are beginning to break through, then hopefully there will be lots of other me's in that kind of, like, finding their ways in different sectors. So
definitely. Yeah. And what's your advice for anyone looking to get started?
To just get started. Like, whether you're wanting to get into the world of motorsport or golf or football or whatever it may be, like, start by putting your own content out there. I know that you mentioned, like, sometimes it can feel difficult to think, if I use my name, then my colleagues at work or my friends might find it or whatever. but you've just got to have the confidence to go for it. I mean, you could write under a pseudonym if you wanted to, but yeah, just get going. Whether you want to be a writer, start your own blog. If you want to be a broadcaster, start your own YouTube channel or your own podcast, or there's lots of different ways to get going. But yeah, the first thing is to just take the plunge and to start, because from there you will get the experience, you'll get the exposure therapy, which I mentioned earlier, which is so important. And you will meet fellow creators that maybe are in the same position as you, or maybe might be a few levels up, that can offer you advice. And there's a lot that you can begin with and get started with. And it's just go for it. If you're passionate about it and you think this is what you want to do, then there should be nothing stopping you apart from yourself.
That's great to hear, and I think I needed to pay here. So last one for you, Katy. I know I keep saying last one, but this is
that's so cool. I don't mind.
What's your way? Because you have such a busy schedule. You're always traveling, going to the races, then you've got to ride and meeting these amazing people. So I'm sure you get the adrenaline and the dopamine hit from this. What's your way of unwinding in between?
Oh, that is a good question. I really struggle with unwinding. I think like my idea of unwinding is just literally like lying on my bed and going on TikTok for 3 hours. That's my way of unwinding, of just sort of literally shutting off. But I'm trying to get more into the gym this year, which has not gone too well. I haven't been in like a month because of the traveling. And then when I got back, I got sick, which explains my slightly grovelly voice that I've got today. But yeah, like trying to find other pockets of things I can do. Other than that, just like consuming YouTube videos, things like that is probably my way to unwind. I wish I had a more inspirational answer. Like I like to climb mountains or something, but instead it's literally I like to be a potato in a bed in my blanket, like just nobody talk to me, just leave me alone. And that's probably
I think my audience going to resonate with being a potato. I think especially this year, like it's been such a busy year for like talking to friends or even family and people that I know. I think just being a potato, like this couch is literally
this is so comfy, this couch
this afternoon, buying me Christmas trees. To me, I'm literally going to be a potato.
Pop a movie on or something and you'll be fine. That's probably it.
It was amazing speaking to you. I had a little fangirling moment.
Oh, bless you, that's so sweet.
Kind of jealous, kind of so envious of all the people you've got to meet, but I just rate how much you've done. I think I just really rate how many things you've done independently, not even thinking about whether I'm going to get there. And it's despite like obviously your dad coming from a protective place,
of course,
but still him questioning, Katy, just have a bit of realistic expectation. I just rate how much you've pushed yourself to keep climbing and trying to get to where you are today.
It's been great.
Thank you. All the best.
Thank you so much.
Have an amazing holiday, and I really hope you get to unwind before the next season.
I hope I get to have my potato lifestyle for at least 2 weeks or something over Christmas. That would be great. But thank you so much for having me.